reality is what you can get away with. Robert Anton Wilson. This is a video about magic. It will show you how to use the magical power of words to brainwash women to fall in love with you, desire you, and chase you. Sigmund Freud said that words were originally magic, and to this day, words have retained much of their ancient magical power. I used these magic word spells I'm going to show you to get girls like these. Despite the fact that I am not good looking or rich, I'm not tall, I barely have any friends, and I have no social media. Now before we get started, you should know that this video is actually part 2 of a series about how to make women worship you using mind control and propaganda techniques developed by totalitarian governments, cult leaders, and intelligence agencies during the 20th century. In part 1, I showed you how to use these mind control techniques on yourself to program yourself to have bulletproof confidence, to be charismatic and powerful with women. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, then go and do that now, because everything else I'm going to teach you here directly follows on from what we covered there. Now, just to refresh your memory, in part 1, we said that as a man, you have 2 options. Option 1 is that you can settle for whatever type of woman you're able to attract right now. Maybe a girl who's a 5 or 6 or even a 7. And that doesn't require you to do all that much. But if you want to get the hottest women, if you want to get the kinds of beautiful girls who are actually inspiring and energizing to be around, then you need to think a little bit outside the box, particularly if you're not a good-looking guy yourself, as I'm not. And what I said is that getting a beautiful girl and having her be completely devoted to you and worship you, it all comes down to one big secret. And that is what I call being the dictator. Being the dictator of your own reality, and even more important, being the dictator of her reality, which is what I'm going to show you how to do in this video. And what this fundamentally comes down to is something called frame control. Controlling the frame, reframing, deframing, outframing, becoming a master of controlling frames with your language and your behavior. That is how you make girls love you. That is how you make girls chase you, even if you're not good looking, even if you're not rich, even if you're short, broke, old, fat, bald, etc. It all comes down to frame control. So what is a frame? And more importantly, how does this get you beautiful 18-year-old girls running around your house in lingerie? A frame means a certain interpretation of reality. It's your frame of reference or frame of mind. Because in reality, everything can be interpreted in many different ways, and no final interpretation can ever be proved to be correct. For example, if you look at this image, do you see an old woman or a young woman? Depending on how you look at it, it can be either. So when we talk about a frame, we're talking about one interpretation of a set of facts, one interpretation of reality. But ultimately, reality can always be interpreted in many different ways. No one interpretation is ever truly final. So when we talk about frame control, we are talking about controlling the frame through which a woman views you. One woman can look at you and think, that's a handsome, attractive guy. Another woman might think you're a loser. It all depends on the frame through which she is viewing you. And to have frame control means that we want to control that frame. In other words, it's about controlling her interpretation of you. And this is what the game is all about. Every single thing you say to a girl is building a frame in her mind about who you are, what kind of man you are. And women either become attracted to you or repulsed by you based on what this frame is. If you don't learn to proactively choose the frame through which she views you, you will fall into a frame which you have not chosen, and it usually won't be a good one. Guys who are unsuccessful with women who get a lot of rejections, they are masters at creating a frame that repels women. They're actually very good at it. It's actually a skill they have. But if you want to attract women instead of repelling them, then you need to become a master at setting an attractive frame rather than an unattractive frame. And that's what this video is all about. This is going to be basically a full paid program tier training in making women love you and chase you using frame control, aka mind control. So what I'm going to show you here is how to create a frame and make the girl believe that you are an attractive man and she already wants you. Which is kind of a funny way of thinking about it, right? Like we kind of assume that you have to wait for the girl to become attracted to you on her own. And I'm saying here, that's not actually how this works. When you understand frame control, you can make the girl believe she's already attracted to you. You can kind of almost trick her into believing she already wants you. And then she falls into your frame and she actually does start to really want you. It's very, very strange that it works like this, but it does. Something else I want to quickly address here is this whole issue of looks. The idea that you need to be good looking to attract a girl. You need to have a certain face shape, a certain height, a certain body, etc. This stuff becomes completely irrelevant when you understand frame control. And the reason why is that frame control literally lets you induce hallucinations in women. In other words, you can alter your physical appearance at will. You can make yourself beautiful or hideous as if by magic. Now, why is that? It's because as far as any of us can tell, there is no such thing as objective reality somewhere out there, which is solid and which we can access. Every single thing we see, feel, hear, or touch is filtered for us by our brains. We cannot directly perceive objective reality. We can only see what our brain, our unconscious processes tell us is reality. And our brains can be messed with or tricked into seeing things that aren't there or into not seeing things that are there. And so when you create a frame in the girl's mind that you are attractive, when you get her to interpret you as an attractive guy, she sees everything about you, including your looks, through the filter of that frame. And she literally begins to hallucinate that you are good looking, you are tall, you are handsome, all this stuff. I had a girlfriend I was with for years who swore I was 6'1", despite incontrovertible physical evidence to the contrary. People see what they want to see. So there is no objective reality at all when it comes to human beings, at least not one that we can directly access. Everything's filtered for us through the prism of our brains. This means there are only perceptions. And if you control the perception, then you control the reality. There is a great book about this by a neuroscientist called Leonard Lodineau. It's called Subliminal: How Your Unconscious Mind Rules Your Behavior. There's a clip here from a talk he gave at Google a few years ago, which is very, very interesting in this regard.
Now this is the image that your conscious mind perceives when you look at the road. Let me show you now the image that your retina picks up, okay? Your retina picks up an image that's only clear in the very center of the area that you're fixating on. And it's very fuzzy outside of that. What your brain does is it takes this and it uses this data, and it uses the data from both eyes, and it fills in the gaps, and it uses the context that you're looking at, and it uses even your expectations and your desires to present to you a clear image and a three-dimensional image, which is not really there.
So in other words, what this means is that girls never actually see you as you are. They never see the quote-unquote real you. When you meet a girl, what her eye is seeing when she looks at you is actually just this vague, blurry image. It's not seeing the details. It's not seeing if you're handsome or ugly. But then her brain fills in the missing details itself. It literally hallucinates the finer points of what you look like based on her expectations, desires, fears, prejudices, past experiences, her emotional state at the time. And this is why two women can perceive you completely differently. One might see you as ugly, unattractive, repulsive, and another might perceive you as handsome and charismatic. And it's because these traits of ugly or handsome basically don't exist in any solid way. Again, the only thing her retina is seeing is literally just a blur. But then her unconscious mind fills in the gaps, fills in the missing details. It constructs the reality for her. So perception is reality. The perception is more important than the reality. When you control her perception of you through framing, you control the reality. And this applies even to seemingly very solid parts of reality, like how you look physically. Frame control, aka mind control, allows you to literally shapeshift and transform your physical appearance. It allows you to make her hallucinate that you're as handsome as Brad Pitt, if you want to. Again, people see what they want to see. So how do you do this? How do you make a girl desire you sexually using frame control? How do you make her see you as hot? How do you make her chase you aggressively? That's what we're going to cover here. And I'm going to give you many, many lines and magic words that let you cast this particular spell on a woman. Now, first off, I need to tell you that all these lines I'm going to give you here, they all fall under the category of a very old technique that was used by the original pickup artists. And it's a technique which they used to call being cocky and funny.
Hi, I'm David D'Angelo. Welcome to my program, Cocky Comedy and Other Conversation Skills. Today we're going to talk about one of my very favorite tools to use when it comes to attracting women. That special combination of arrogance and humor that I call cocky comedy.
This cocky and funny technique is the best way to create a frame that makes women want you. In other words, it's the best way to make them interpret you as an extremely attractive man who women in general like. And when they interpret you in that way, they begin chasing you as well. So everything we're going to do here today falls under the rubric of the cocky funny technique. Now, right away, I just want to address some of the potential criticisms or objections to this which some guys might have, particularly to any of you who have been around a long time and seen this type of stuff before. This technique of being cocky and funny to attract girls, it can seem on the surface like it's kind of cheesy, maybe a little bit corny, kind of played out. But what I've discovered is that there's actually a lot of much deeper and borderline occult stuff going on under the surface of this old technique of cocky funny, which I don't think the pickup artists themselves ever even realized. Basically, what I've come to realize after many years of doing this is that the cocky funny technique, which sounds like a sort of innocent, almost cheesy thing, it's literally a form of black magic. I've never seen anybody talk about this before, but this cocky funny technique we're going to get into, it is literally a form of mind control. It works exactly like propaganda. Specifically, propaganda as it was used in Nazi Germany during World War II, which we're going to discuss a little bit later in this video. Cocky funny is a way of manipulating a woman's unconscious mind to alter her perception of you. And this is done with the goal of changing her behavior, such as by having her make love to you within 2 hours of meeting, for example. In this respect, it is literally black magic, which I'll explain a little bit more later on, but we're getting ahead of ourselves here. So first off, starting at the very beginning, what is cocky funny? What does that mean? What is this technique? How do you do it? And why does it work so well to make women attracted to you? Cocky funny is anything you say to a girl that frames you as high value, attractive, handsome, very desirable to women. Anything that creates a frame that the girl already wants you and that she's already chasing you. That's the cocky part of cocky and funny. It's anything you say that's kind of arrogant, self-aggrandizing, overconfident. But what makes it work and what makes it socially acceptable is that you wrap that cocky statement in the packaging of a joke or a humorous remark. Hence why it's called cocky funny and not just cocky. If it's just cocky without being funny, that's arrogant. It will usually piss the girl off and rub her the wrong way. Just being cocky without being funny almost never works. An example of a purely cocky statement that isn't funny at all would be to tell the girl something like, "I'm a hot guy and you're attracted to me." Now, if you said that to a girl, it would usually not make her attracted to you. It would probably just make her laugh in your face. She'd be like, "Okay, sure, guy," and then she'd walk away. An example of a statement that is both cocky and funny, however, would be if you told the girl something like, "Don't you just hate the fact that you're standing here beside such an unbelievably handsome man because everyone's looking at me and no one's looking at you?" Now, if you said something like that to a girl, and if you delivered it with confidence and assuming you spoke slowly and clearly and loudly enough for her to actually understand you, then she will generally laugh and she will like you. And that's because the humor of what you're saying takes the edge off the arrogance of it. But you'll notice the message here is exactly the same. The message you transmitted in both those statements is that I am a hot guy. But when you say that overtly, i.e. cocky without being funny, it doesn't work. You need to essentially conceal that core message of I am hot within the form of a joke or humor. That's what makes it acceptable and palatable to the girl. It's like making medicine for kids taste like candy rather than taste like medicine. The flip side of this is when guys say things that are funny but without being cocky, and that's generally not that good either. You know, for example, recently I saw a guy joke that the difference between a woman and a PS5 is that when I touch the PS5, it always gets turned on. Now that would be an example of low value humor. It's funny, but the meaning behind it, the core message it conveys about the man who says it is, I'm unattractive and women don't like to have sex with me. So if you use humor and make jokes that are not cocky, or worse, jokes which frame you as unattractive and low value, the girl will laugh, she'll like the jokes, she may even say you're a funny guy, but she will not be attracted to you. And of course, attraction is what we're aiming for here. So cocky funny humor is this magical combination that both makes her laugh and frames you as high value and attractive. And as David D'Angelo explained back in the day, and he was 100% right, this is the best form of humor to use to attract women. There's lots of jokes and humor you can use that will make women laugh, but won't necessarily make them attracted. If you want to make them attracted, you need to practice this formula of being specifically cocky and funny. That is high value humor as opposed to low value humor. So everything I've just said so far is the surface level explanation of cocky funny. It's what you'll learn from all the pickup artists. I haven't said anything new here. However, there's actually a much deeper reason why cocky funny humor works so well to make girls attracted to you. And this is that when you really break this down and when you look at what's going on under the surface, It's a form of mind control. It's a form of brainwashing. It's literally a form of black magic. Now, why do I say that? Because cocky, funny humor, as I said before, what it's actually doing is it's manipulating the woman's unconscious mind to change her perception of you. It seems very innocent. It seems like you're just joking around. You're just flirting. But what's actually happening under the surface with these kinds of jokes I'm going to give you is a principle I call the psychological Trojan Horse. And this is basically the essence of mind control. So we all know the story of the Trojan Horse, right? The Greeks were trying to conquer Troy, but they couldn't get past the castle walls. So they pretended to surrender, and they told the Trojans, here, have this big wooden horse as a gift, a symbol of our surrender. It's all good. Don't worry about it. We're going home now. Just keep the horse. So the Trojans were happy with this, obviously. They let this big wooden horse inside, and of course, the Greek army was hiding inside the horse. And once they were inside the castle walls, they sprung out, they killed everyone, they took over the city. Now, in our analogy here, everyone has a conscious mind and an unconscious mind. And in this metaphor, the woman's conscious mind is like the castle walls of Troy. They protect what's inside the castle walls, they protect the city inside, and the city inside is her unconscious mind. So again, if you remember our example, if you tell a woman overtly, I'm a hot guy and you want me, what happens is her conscious mind perceives this as a sort of attack on itself. She perceives that you're trying to make her think something or feel something that she doesn't necessarily want to think. And so her conscious mind repels that statement. Her conscious mind easily repels your attempt to influence her by telling her you want me. It's like if you fired an arrow at the castle walls, it just bounces right off. So if you want to influence her, you have to get the message through to her unconscious mind. You have to get past the castle walls, past her conscious mind's defenses, and basically you do that by distracting the conscious mind with something else. You do it with a Trojan horse. And so with cocky, funny humor, the reason this works, the deeper reason this works, is that when you wrap the cocky statement within the form of humor and a joke, that humorous packaging is like the Trojan horse that allows the underlying message to sneak through, to get past her conscious defenses and into her unconscious mind. And once a message has gotten into a woman's unconscious mind, it is believed without question. So again, to take our previous example here, if you were to tell a girl something like, don't you just hate dating such an unbelievably good looking guy because everyone's looking at me and no one's looking at you? When you say something like that, the core message being conveyed there beneath the humor, concealed inside the humor, is I'm better than you. The message is, I'm extremely good looking and you should feel attracted to me. Now again, if you just said that bluntly, the message would be repelled by the conscious mind. But because you wrapped it in the form of a joke, her conscious mind gets distracted by the fact that it's a joke. And while her conscious mind is distracted, the underlying message that I'm better than you sneaks past into her unconscious, where, as I said, it is instantly believed. So that is the power of cocky, funny humor. There's actually a lot more going on with this technique under the hood than it might seem at first. Now, I'm about to get into the examples in a second, which will be the real meat of this presentation, the actual words and lines you can use that create this frame and get her chasing you in this way. But before we get to that, I just want to quickly address some of the ethical and moral implications of this, because as I said, you are literally manipulating her unconscious mind with this. You are implanting feelings and thoughts into her mind, which she might not have decided to have on her own. And this is literally mind control. It seems on the surface that this is just like innocent, flirty banter. And it is. One of the reasons this technique works so well is because it's so disarming. You're not using hypnosis on her or doing anything that seems sinister. You're not even really negging her here. And girls actually love this form of humor. Like, you're giving them what they actually want and what they actually enjoy in terms of the kind of flirty banter she likes to have with a guy. But at the same time, we have to admit here, you are literally brainwashing them when you do this. This is the textbook definition of brainwashing in terms of distracting someone's conscious mind so that you can implant a message into their subconscious mind, arguably against their will. I mean, I don't really think it's against their will, but they're not conscious you're doing it, by definition. It's actually quite similar to how a pickpocket will distract you by, say, tapping your elbow in order to direct your focus there while they're taking your wallet out of your back pocket. This is almost like a psychological version of that trick in a way. And so the obvious question is this actually okay to do, morally speaking? And the answer is obviously it depends how you use this, right? I mean, it depends what your intentions are. It depends on whether you're trying to give the girl a good experience overall, which hopefully you are. I don't think anyone watching this has negative intentions. And frankly, to be honest with you, I don't believe in this school of thought which says you're not allowed to influence someone's unconscious mind ever. I think that's bullshit. I think it's an idea that completely falls apart if you think about it for more than 20 seconds. Because, for example, when you go watch a movie, they are manipulating the talk out of your unconscious mind. They're doing it deliberately, they're doing it strategically, they're doing it ultimately to make money for themselves, and yet you love it. Watching a great movie or a great TV show is the high point of your day. It's a gift. And yet a movie that doesn't manipulate you, a movie that doesn't use effective storytelling to manipulate your unconscious mind, we call that a bad movie. It's boring. When you watch it, you are not thinking, oh, thank you, screenwriter, for not manipulating my emotions. What you are thinking, all you're thinking is, this movie is boring. It sucks. I want to turn it off. Every single thing you enjoy is enjoyable to you because on some level, it is intentionally manipulating your unconscious mind to produce that result. And it's exactly the same with talking to girls. When you control the frame to make them chase you, you are manipulating their unconscious minds. But you are doing this to create an experience that is extremely enjoyable to her and that is positive for her overall. The alternative, if you don't use this kind of stuff, is that you're going to come across to her as boring. And that actually is inflicting pain on her. I say being boring, making someone endure the pain of being bored, is actually more immoral than manipulating them. Assuming, of course, the manipulation is done with positive intentions and it will give them a positive experience overall. Okay, so with all that out of the way, let's get into the actual meat here, the actual lines and magic words and what I call word spells you can cast on a girl to install attraction in her unconscious mind and make her chase you. So first off, here are 3 different opening lines you could use from the very first moment you meet a girl. All 3 of these are cocky funny and immediately start building this you want me frame right from the very start. So the first opener would be something like you could say to her, hey, how's it going? I couldn't let you sit here all night without giving you an opportunity to get to know me. Another example, you could walk up to her and tell her, I don't believe we've met. I'd like to solve that problem. Hi, I'm Michael. And then a third example, this is for, if you ever make eye contact with a girl and she kind of stares at you a little bit longer than normal. Well, one thing you can say, I learned this from John Lannis, when a girl looks in your eyes a little longer than normal, you can walk up to her slowly, look her right in the eye with a kind of half smile on your face and say, what are you looking at? Very, very smooth. Works amazing. So those are 3 opening lines which right away are starting to build this you want me frame. They're starting to implant that belief that the girl wants you into her unconscious mind. But they're doing this in a slightly camouflaged way by being disguised as humor. So I just want to briefly explain how each of these lines works its magic on a deeper level. A lot of these other examples I'm going to give you, we're just going to be blasting through them very, very fast, cheat sheet style. But I just want to take a moment to pause here and break down these first 3 lines so you can see how the framing works in each case. Sometimes the frame is subtle, sometimes it's more overt. But all 3 of these openers are immediately assuming and implying that the girl is the one who wants you more than you want her. And that is very, very powerful. Things like this, while subtle, are what cause you to not get rejected as opposed to getting rejected. So let's look at this first one here. I couldn't let you sit here all night without giving you an opportunity to get to know me. That's very obviously creating a you want me frame. It's the most overt and non-subtle of these 3. It's definitely more on the cocky side of the cocky funny spectrum. And when you say something that cocky, especially right off the bat to a complete stranger, you do need to be prepared and expect for her to push back a little bit. She'll usually say something like, oh, really? You think I want to get to know you? You're quite confident, aren't you? And in response to that, you can literally just gaze back at her calmly and say, yep. And you have to understand here, that friction that's being created, the fact that you and the girl are now in this little frame battle, that is actually what makes the girl aroused and gets her attracted. When you assert a frame such as you want me, and the girl pushes back and she acts like, I don't think so, mister. Actually, it's me who's the prize and you should be chasing me. That's conflict. That's what we call a frame battle. There's now 2 opposing frames competing for reality dominance, your frame and her frame. They're competing for which of these conflicting interpretations gets to be seen as reality. And that is actually good. That's actually what we want. We want to get in these little frame battles with girls. That's precisely what shows her you're a man who is able to hold his frame without having other people be able to make you doubt your own reality. And when she sees that you can hold your frame, even when she pushes back, that is actually what makes her aroused and attracted. One of the reasons women test men is precisely to test for this. So in this case, you open with something cocky funny, she naturally gives you a little pushback, you just say, yep, and then you cut the thread and move on to something else. Don't dwell on it. Whatever the test she gave you is, just be like, yep, thanks for noticing. Anyway, I like your vibe. You seem like you're here to party. I think I'm gonna get drunk and do shots and fall asleep under the bar. Blah, 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 blah. Just keep the conversation moving. Okay, next opener here. I don't believe we've met. I'd like to solve that problem. Here you can see that the "you want me" frame is still in there, but now it's more subtle. Because that statement could be interpreted in two ways, right? Like you might be saying it in an arrogant way, like, you don't know me and that's a big problem for you because I'm so great. That would be a little bit too overt. But I don't believe we've met. I'd like to solve that problem. That could also be interpreted in a less cocky way to mean that you think the girl is great and it's a problem for you that you don't know her yet. So that statement is more ambiguous and it's more subtle. But it does have one possible interpretation which implies she wants you, and the subconscious does pick up on that. So how subtle or how overt you want to go with this is a matter of your own personal style and taste. Okay, and then the last cocky funny opener on this list is when a girl is staring at you and you walk over to her and say, "Hey, what are you looking at?" Now this is the most subtle of these three, but the reason this one is cocky and creates the "you want me" frame at all, it really has more to do with how you deliver this than the words themselves. This is a very important point to understand. You can create the "you want me" frame without necessarily ever saying anything overt about it in the content, but you can create the frame just by your body language, by things like how you look at the girl, your vocal tonality, how you speak, the smile on your face, or in some cases, not smiling when you'd be expected to smile. So let's just look at this one as an example. These words, "what are you looking at?" could be delivered in a lot of different ways. You could deliver them in an aggressive way, like, "What are you looking at?" That's obviously not what we want. You could say them in kind of an unsure, uncertain tone, like, "Hey, what are you looking at?" We obviously don't want that either. What we want is a certain delivery that's kind of arrogant, but it's done with a sense of humor, aka cocky funny. So you walk up to her with kind of a sardonic smile on your face, and it's, "Hey, what are you looking at?" It's sardonic, it's humorous, it's almost ironic in a way. Like you're clearly not taking yourself seriously when you deliver it. And as with almost all these lines I'm going to give you, the delivery here is as important or more important than the content of the words themselves. Okay, next. Here are some more funny little jokes and verbal spells you can drop into the conversation with the girl to build this frame that she wants you. You can ask the girl her name and she's like, "Alicia," and you can say, "Well, Alicia, tonight's your lucky night." When she says why, you can say, "Because tonight you get to go out with me." Just simple little things like that. Again, don't dwell on it. Don't act like, "Hey, I just used my cocky funny line. You like it? Did it work?" You just drop it in like throwing a pebble in the pond, and it's like you turn away before you even see the pebble make a ripple in the water. You just say these little things, it's very offhand, very casual, and then you move the conversation on to something else. Another great way I like to build this frame is with my responses to the girl's most common questions. So if you're talking to anyone, at some point they'll always ask you, "What do you do?" And you can give them the real answer, which is boring, or you can use this as a way to create attraction and make her laugh. So one thing I like to do when a girl asks me what I do for a living is to make up outrageous lies and boasts. Like I tell them things like, "I invented the question mark. I invented the bananas and pajamas. I'm the mayor of this piece of shit town. I invented the internet. You're welcome." Now, these are obviously funny because they're so absurd, but the subconscious mind can't really process humor. It takes everything literally. So anytime you make a joke where the frame, the meaning of the joke is that you're kind of above it all, you're better than other people or you're better than her, her conscious mind understands he's just joking, but that frame, that underlying message that you're superior, that I'm better than you basically, that does slip into her subconscious and begin to make her start viewing you that way. Again, I want to emphasize, subtle, gradual, doesn't happen all at once. This is not like flicking a light switch. This is like slowly turning up a volume knob. Okay, next. If you're dancing with a girl or if she's being kind of flirty, you can tell her things like, "I will thank you to stop undressing me with your eyes. I am not sleeping with you tonight." Anytime she makes a mistake or does something silly, you can tell her, "Look, I'm sorry. I just don't think this relationship is working out. It's not you, it's me." If the girl ever says anything about alcohol or getting a drink, you can accuse her of wanting to spike your drink so she can take advantage of you sexually. You can look at the girl and say, "Were you just checking out my ass?" And what makes something like this funny, again, it's down to the delivery. You want to actually deliver it in a serious accusatory tone. It's not just like, were you just checking out my ass? That has no power. Really commit to it. Think of the tone a woman would use if she was making a real accusation like this. "Were you just checking out my ass?" For a second, the girl really won't know if you're being serious. She'll be like, No, I wasn't. And obviously you can then break character and make it clear you're just messing with her. But creating that little moment of real tension is actually what then creates the laughter. Because laughter is always a way of releasing tension. You can tell the girl things like, "No sex before marriage. I'm saving myself for the right person. I'll have a drink with you, maybe, but no sex on the first date. I need to be wined and dined first." Or you can say, "I'll have a drink with you, but I'm not going to let you get me drunk and take advantage of me." These are all examples of role reversal. It's a very powerful way to create the you want me frame. So it's based on taking traditional gender stereotypes and then reversing them. So a gender stereotype in our culture is that men all want to get lucky. They all want to go to bed with a girl, but the girl is a little bit prudish and she's like saying, no, I'm not that type of girl. You'll have to work hard for me and commit before you get me into bed. So that's the accepted stereotype that everyone understands, everyone gets. And what you want to do with role reversal is to invert that stereotype. Turn it upside down. Steal her frame and use it against her. Act like she's the one who's trying to get you into bed. She's the one who's thirsty and desperate, and you're the one who's kind of above it all. Like, can you just control yourself for a moment? I'm not that easy, okay? You can tell girls things like, you only want me for my body. You know, it's hard being such a sex symbol. There's just too many girls and not enough time. I just wish I could clone myself into 5 people so I could finally please all the women. Girls just want to use me for sex, and I'm kind of over it. You know, I just wish someone would appreciate me for my mind, for the poetry of my soul, not just for my super hot, chiseled, sexy abs. And that kind of exaggeration is a big key to this, by the way, because that's what makes it funny. You know, over-exaggerating anything generally makes it humorous and lets the girl know, like, oh, okay, he's in on the joke. He doesn't actually think he's that hot. He's just being playful. That takes the edge off the arrogance and cockiness. It makes it go down smoother. But again, subconsciously, that message that I am hot and you are chasing me is getting through because the subconscious can't process irony or sarcasm or humor. Again, it takes everything literally. So even when you make an ironic joke about how I'm so hot, that does make her unconscious start viewing you in that way, even if her conscious mind knows that you're just joking around. So those are just a few examples of cocky funny to get us started here. I'm going to give you many more examples at a moment. But before I do, I want to explain something very, very important here. Like, you might see these lines, and if you're like I was, you might think some of these are kind of cheesy. And even beyond that, you might be thinking, how could like a jokey little line like this actually make a girl attracted to you? Especially if she wasn't attracted before. And the truth about this is, and you really need to understand this, it's not that any of these lines individually make her feel attracted to you. Rather, it's the compound cumulative effect that occurs when you keep layering in many of these lines and lines like them throughout the course of a longer conversation. Very, very important point to understand. This is all about repetition. Repetition of that core theme that I'm attractive and you want me, or I'm attractive and women in general want me. Repetition of the frame. And this takes us directly to Joseph Goebbels and the Nazi theory of propaganda.
I think that it might be interesting to make a really serious study of propaganda.
I find it interesting, and there's plenty to study. Here are a few on which I've been gathering material. Hitler and Nazi Germany had a campaign of propaganda that ran over many years.
Now again, as I said in the first video in this series, I'm obviously not endorsing Nazi Germany. Don't get me confused here. I'm not endorsing any of these dictators we've been talking about. I'm studying this stuff as a phenomenon in a value-neutral, scientific way. So one of the things you'll find if you study Nazi Germany and the propaganda they used is they believed that having just a few simple messages and repeating them over and over and over again was the key to brainwashing people to do anything. And it's exactly the same with women. It's exactly the same with how you make a girl believe you're attractive and make her start to chase you. Joseph Goebbels, the minister of propaganda in Nazi Germany, said, "We operate in tune with the principle. Constant dripping wears away the stone." And that's exactly how brainwashing a girl using cocky funny works as well. Like I said, it's not like you say just one of these lines and then she immediately becomes attracted to you like flipping a switch. Instead, it's this constant drip, 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 drip of little remarks, little jokes you make, very offhand, very casual. But the cumulative effect of all these little jokes over time is literally to work like propaganda to begin to assert the frame that you are attractive, you are handsome, women love you, the girl loves you, you're up here on a pedestal, she's down below you, she is chasing you. And women will believe this. They will believe it if you just keep repeating it over and over and over again. That's how propaganda works. And over time, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. It all adds up and it begins to influence the girl's subconscious to make her feel attracted to you. I'm quoting here from a book called Selling Hitler, Propaganda and the Nazi Brand by Nicholas O'Shaughnessy.
Faith in Begorra, a fellow potato eater. My real name's McGill. Yeah, the Jew thing I just do for the homeboys.
As he writes, the essence of Nazi propaganda was repetition. It was an article of faith and everything was reducible to this formula. Goebbels argued that the skill of British propaganda during the First World War resided in the fact that they used just a few powerful slogans and kept repeating them. Just a few powerful slogans kept repeating them. The Nazis believed a formulaic propaganda methodology must be applied even at the cost of alienating the sophisticated. As one Nazi official wrote, repetition is the precursor to success, and simplicity is the key to the emotional and mental world of the masses. Repetition and simplicity. Remember that. That's what makes this all work. So don't overcomplicate this. You need to choose just one idea, one frame, just one thing you want the girl to believe, i.e., you are attracted to me. And then you want to repeatedly hammer that one simple idea into her subconscious over and over and over again from as many different angles and in as many different ways as possible. So you're not saying the exact same words every time, but the core message behind everything you're saying is always the same. It's always some variation of, I am attractive and you want me. You are chasing me. I am better than you. Now, never putting it quite that bluntly, of course, but that's the fundamental meaning. That's the core message concealed within every single one of the jokes on this list. And when you just keep repeating that same core message over and over and over again, eventually what happens is that her subconscious breaks and it starts to simply accept this as being the truth. This has been studied by scientists. In social psychology, it's known as the illusory truth effect or the repeated exposure effect. In other words, they did studies in which they found that people aren't convinced something is true through logical arguments or reasoned debate. Instead, the way people become convinced that something is true is generally just by hearing it repeated many, many, many times. If people hear something enough times in enough different contexts, their brain simply assumes it must be true. And if you understand this, you understand a great deal about humanity. This also has enormous practical utility, because when you get this, it means you can create truth, not through logical argument or winning debates, but simply through repetition. You repeat one simple idea long enough in enough different ways and with enough conviction behind it, and people will come to believe it, sometimes even in the absence of any evidence whatsoever. Okay, so that was a very important little interjection to make there. I want to now get back into our examples, back to this little cheat sheet I'm giving you here. So a few more examples of things you can say to girls which create the frame that she wants you in a playful way. You can tell her, just because I like to flirt does not mean I'm going to put out. I'm more than just a piece of ass. I have depth. I won't let you use me for my body like all the other girls did. You can put her on a point system. If she says something you like or does something you approve of, you can tell her, very good. You get a point for that. And if you get 10 points, you'll win a prize. It's just a little bit patronizing, but not too much. Or if she does something you don't like, you can say, I'm going to have to subtract a point for that. Sorry. That means now looking at our score here, you're now down to -1. Well, anyway, and then you just move on. Don't give her a chance to respond. It's very important, by the way, that when you say these types of things and you drop these cocky, funny jokes, you don't just go silent afterwards. Like, you can go silent and let her respond if you want to, but you need to be able to move on quickly and quickly cut the thread and start another topic of conversation. That can make this very effective because the girl feels like she wasn't able to get the last word in or get her little comeback in, and that makes her want to invest more into trying to win you over, which ends up making her chase you, all of which is good. You obviously want her to be chasing you. And the way you do that is by keeping her a little bit off balance, talking over her, not always giving her a chance to respond. Okay, next, more cocky, funny propaganda lines. You can tell the girl, I think we'd make a great husband and wife team. Just imagine our children. They could have your bubbly personality and my perfect body. Again, implication, I'm the good looking one here. You're the one with the quote unquote good personality. And that's great because it's kind of a backhanded compliment. It's a tease, but it's not something a girl can get mad at because technically you said something good about her. Next, you can randomly blurt things out like, I often get mistaken for Ryan Gosling while I'm out. It's quite annoying, really. You can tell her, I'm like cocaine. I'm white, I'm addictive, and girls leave the bathroom with me all over their face. You can ask the girl what she's doing later, and when she says, I'm doing blah, 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 you can say, too bad. That means you won't get to make out with me. Again, you want me, you're chasing me, you're the one who'd be winning if you got to make out with me. Now, if the girl gives you pushback or tests you about any of this, if she teases you, if she mocks you, if she playfully insults you, that's all good. That actually means this is working. Girls don't test a guy unless on some level they're considering having sex with him. For example, she isn't shit testing the homeless guy on the street. She isn't mocking him or making fun of him. She only makes fun of you or tests you if on some level she's considering you as a candidate for a guy she might want to date. And so when you use these cocky, funny lines, the girl will often push back and test you to see how you'll react and to see if you're able to keep bantering and hold your frame or whether you fold like a piece of paper. So one great line for when a girl tests you is, if by X you mean Y. This is just a good general all-purpose response to any test. So for example, if a girl teases you by saying something like, are you gay or something? You could say, if by gay you mean extremely handsome and charismatic, then yes, I am. And it doesn't even have to make any logical sense. Just switch out any negative label with anything positive. if by X you mean Y. So, if she says you're arrogant, you could say, if by arrogant you mean that I'm magnetically handsome, brilliant, intelligent, and modest, then yes, I agree. Any test, any insult, any mockery she throws at you can easily be flipped around like that. Okay, next up, you can use role plays that put the girl in a position of implied lower status to you, lower value to you. For example, you can tell her, you can be my bodyguard. Let's see how strong you are. Are you strong enough to be my bodyguard? Let's see, let's test it out. And girls love these types of little role plays. If you say that to a girl in the bar, she'll immediately be like, yeah, I'll be your bodyguard. I'll protect you. She'll play along right away. And this is a funny one because, on one hand, girls like this because on one level, you're implying something good about her. Like she's a strong woman or she's a badass and like anything a man can do, a woman can do better. Like women can be action heroes and they can kick ass. So that's why she goes for this and she likes it. But on a subtle level, what does this joke actually imply? If someone is your bodyguard, are they higher status than you or are they lower status? Obviously, they're lower status. So by saying to a girl, you can be my bodyguard, you're putting her into a frame where she's lower status than you. And she'll happily fall right into that frame by playing along with the joke. Very subtle, and you wouldn't think this would have an effect, but it does. These subtle little things, I'm telling you, they all add up. Again, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. Or as Goebbels put it, constant dripping wears away the stone. Something small like this, a little joke about hiring the girl to be your bodyguard, obviously on its own, it's not going to make the girl want to go to bed with you right away. But when this is done as part of a longer conversation, along with 2 or 3 other subtle little jokes like this, they all contribute to building that larger frame, that frame of I'm up here, you're down here, you're chasing me. And then as that frame is built, it begins to take on a life of its own. And then you reach what I call the point of no return. This is where, the girl has become absolutely convinced that you are higher up than her and she does like you. And at this point, you actually couldn't convince her otherwise, even if you tried. I've actually experimented with this myself just for the sake of science. I've said to girlfriends of mine who I first attracted using these types of techniques, I explained the techniques to them. I told them what I was doing. I said, you do realize you didn't like me at first, but then I said this and this and this, and then it made you like me. And they always say that's nonsense. I always liked you. And it wasn't because of anything you did, idiot. But they're wrong. They weren't attracted at first. I know this for a fact because in some cases they initially actually rejected me. But I made them attracted to me using these frames we're talking about. And once a girl reaches that point of no return when she has become fully convinced she's attracted to you and that you're better than her in some way, you actually can't talk her out of it even if you wanted to. It's like that old Mark Twain quote. It's easier to fool a person than to convince them they've been fooled. Okay, so saying you'll hire the girl is a good little role play. You can tell the girl, you know what? I like you. You're hired. When she says, well, hired for what? You can say, well, Becky, you strike me as a very smart, capable, and strong woman. I'm going to make you my secretary. Or I'm going to make you my executive assistant. Or I'm going to make you my housekeeper. Or, you know what? I'm going to give you my power of attorney. I'm going to make you my lawyer. You can defend me against all the people who are trying to sue me right now. And when she says, well, who's suing you? You can say, well, this girl got hit by a car because she was distracted by how beautiful I am, so now she's suing me for medical bills. And I'm just making this up on the spot right now. I've never said that before. I'm just giving you an example of how easy it is to improvise this type of stuff once you know the basic theme you're trying to establish. You can basically just lead anything back towards this core idea of women want me, I'm attractive. So hiring her is a fun little role play to do that because again, employer versus employee, obviously the employer is higher status. And then you can call back to this role play later on in the conversation. If the girl makes a mistake or spills a drink or stumbles over her words or something, you can tell her, you know what? You're fired. I expect a certain level of professionalism here. That's another great little theme to play with in cocky funny humor, acting like you're exasperated with the girl, feigning exasperation. Like when she says something, you can kind of sigh and roll your eyes like, very, very good, very powerful. It's funny, it'll make her laugh. But again, what's the implication? What's the underlying frame? What's the programming that's going into her subconscious? I'm the one who's judging you here. I'm up here in the judging role. You're down here as the person being judged. Feigning exasperation. Great way to do that. And again, it's funny, so it's not obnoxious or actually rude, but it still creates that underlying frame. Another example of that, say you're at a restaurant and the waitress messes up your order. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. You can look at her with a serious expression on your face and say, don't do it again. That's very funny. Girls will laugh every time. And obviously she knows you're just messing around. You're just pulling her leg. You're not actually mad. But it's attractive. It's an example of attractive humor because when a waitress messes up your order and she says I'm so sorry, what do most guys do? What does everyone do? Oh, no worries. Don't even worry about it. That's the expected script. When you deviate from that expected script, you create tension. And again, tension needs to get released and it always gets released in the form of laughter. So a great form of attractive high-value humor you can use in many situations is called agree and amplify. So like we said here, if she says sorry, you look at her seriously and you say, don't do it again. You're agreeing that she should be sorry and you're amplifying it. That's funny because it's not what you're supposed to do in polite, normal etiquette. And it also creates a frame that you're high value because it's sort of jokingly implying, I'm a very important person who lesser people need to walk on eggshells around. Another example of agree and amplify is anytime a girl says something negative or unflattering about herself and she's kind of expecting you to disagree out of politeness, right? But what you can do instead is you agree with her and then you exaggerate in a funny way. So for example, if the girl shows up to a date and she says like, I'm sorry I'm kind of underdressed today. I didn't have time to change out of my work clothes. Now, normally the polite thing to say there would be something like, oh no, not at all. You look great. But instead, the agree and amplify response would be something like, yes, I was thinking you look a little bit sloppy and unkempt. I didn't want to say anything about it to be polite, but you could even go further with this and exaggerate it more. Like you might say, and don't you find it funny how these people looking at us here are probably thinking, what is that handsome, well-dressed gentleman doing with that little hobo girl? Maybe he's doing charity work to help her get out of the slums. That's an example of agree and amplify. Again, very much adds to this frame of you want me, I'm up here, I'm higher value. And you can also use agree and amplify when a girl tests you or makes fun of you. So if a girl says anything negative towards you, you agree with what she said, but then you exaggerate it to the point where it becomes ridiculous. For example, if she said like, you're just trying to pick me up, you can agree and amplify by saying, that's right, I am trying to pick you up. I'm trying to marry you and put a baby in your belly actually. I want to put a ring on that finger and I want to commit. And I want to show you what a good husband and provider I can be for you. And with that example, you've started out by agreeing with her, like, yes, I'm trying to pick you up. And you then amplify it and exaggerate it to the point where it becomes ridiculous. Like, not only am I trying to pick you up, but I'm trying to marry you and put a baby in your belly. And then you can even turn that into a kind of sarcastic statement, which ends up framing you as the one who's actually higher value than her. Because the sarcasm with which you say like, oh yeah, I'm trying to marry you and put a ring on your finger. You're saying that and on paper that's positive, but because you're saying it in a tone of voice that's so sarcastic and patronizing and almost like dripping with contempt, the actual meaning of what's getting implied there ends up being like, as if I would marry you. Get over yourself. And remember, it's all in good fun. You don't ever want to actually insult the girl here or make her feel bad about herself. This is all teasing. It's all flirting. It's a form of play. Another great line I use all the time that's very, very simple to create this frame is just asking the girl something like, why do you love me so much? Or what do you love about me? And the girl will respond in a variety of ways. She might be playfully sarcastic herself, like, oh, I love you because you're just so handsome and smart and you're just such a nice guy. You're so respectful to women. And, she's obviously being sarcastic. And a great trick there, again, is to actually agree and amplify that. So when a girl says something sarcastic to you, you can agree with her as if she's being sincere. So if she gives you that little sarcastic comment like, oh yeah, you're charming, sure. You can look at her and say, thank you. That really means a lot to me. That's a great one to use on girls who are sarcastic and kind of sassy. Interpret her sarcasm as being genuine. Very, very good. A lot of these are almost like psychological jujitsu in a way, like you use the force of the opponent against them. And as you're seeing here, when you master this frame and frame control generally, and especially when you have a few of these little verbal tricks and spells up your sleeve, like agree and amplify, it gets you to a point where like anything the girl says, you can turn it around on her and make it feed into your frame. And it's really, really fun to do. I love it. I love talking to girls. I love flirting with them. I love verbally sparring with them. I could do it all day long. And when you learn this, it doesn't happen overnight, obviously. You just practice it every day until you get a little bit better over time. But when you've got this dialed in, you'll never have a boring conversation with a woman again. You'll never be bored by a girl again, because it doesn't matter if she's boring. It doesn't matter if she's bland and has nothing interesting to say herself. You can make any conversation interesting. I don't care how boring the girl is. I don't care how brain dead she seems to be. Anything she does can be twisted and reinterpreted to support the frame that she wants me. Like if you ask her what she does and she says like, I'm a dental hygienist, you can say, that's good. I need a girl who makes good money who can support me. Or if she says she's a waitress, you can say, do you really think you can support both of us on your small income? I really want to be a stay-at-home husband. Keep an eye on the TV and such. She tells you she's in college. You could say, well, I like that you value education, but it doesn't sound like you're very established in life yet. I'm really looking for more of a successful woman who works as a CEO maybe and makes at least 6 figures, ideally 7. I'm actually here to find a sugar mommy. Anything she gives you can be twisted around to support the frame. And this is the magic. This is how you become a wizard with your words. And the final technique here, we've already touched on it already to some extent, is where you misinterpret anything the girl says as her wanting you. You can mishear her, or you can act like something innocent she said was actually sexual innuendo. So these are examples straight from David D'Angelo himself. If a girl tells you, well, it's getting late, time for bed, You can reply, I don't think we've known each other long enough for that yet. There's a lot of common words you can mishear or misinterpret in this way. Examples are if she mentions going home, going out, going to bed, moving. Like if she tells you, well, I think it might be time for me to go home. You can look at your watch and say, I've only been talking to you for 15 minutes. I'm not going home with you. Or Owen Cook from RSD always used this line, I'm not going home with you, I'm too shy. And you can literally just blurt that out to a girl. She doesn't even need to say anything. You just, immediately after meeting her, you're just like, I'm not going home with you, I'm too shy. Immediately, what are you doing? You're putting that image in her head of you going home together, but you're doing it in the negative, and so it's more socially acceptable. If she tells you she's leaving, you can say, well, where are you taking me? It better be good. Or if she says she's going to meet a friend somewhere, you can tell her, listen, I'm not having a threesome with you and your friend. I don't know you well enough to make that kind of emotional investment yet. I'm happy to go and meet her with you, but don't get any funny ideas, okay? If she mentions moving, you can say, I'm not moving in with you. I barely know you. And then you can add, and besides, I don't like that area. Another one is the topic of sex. Anytime a girl uses the word sex or brings up the topic in any way, accuse her of being sexually frustrated. Tell her that she's obviously got sex in the mind because she's talking to you. Other examples are words and topics like boyfriend, girlfriend, relationship, single, married, wedding, pregnancy. Anytime a girl uses any of these words or topics, anything to do with relationships, mishear it as if you think she's asking you to be her boyfriend, or she's saying she wants to get married to you. If a girl says, I have a boyfriend, you can mishear her and be like, look, I'm not going to be your boyfriend. I'm flattered you asked though. If she asks you if you have a girlfriend, you can say, look, I'm not making you my girlfriend, okay? Let's just slow down here and not rush into things. Besides, I need to be wined and dined first. If she brings up like her friend who's getting married, for example, you can mishear her and act like she just asked you if you wanted to get married to her. Lots and lots of things you can misinterpret. It's very fun. It all builds that frame that she wants you. And ultimately, as I said, this is a form of mind control. It's a form of hypnosis. And this is ultimately how you program girls to love you and how you program them to chase you. So that is my masterclass on mind control, frame control. Now, one thing I did not cover here is how to control the frame over text message. All the examples I gave you here are mostly for you to use on girls you're talking to in person, face to face, and I wouldn't recommend using them over text necessarily. Because as I mentioned earlier, the delivery of how you say these things, your tone of voice, the look on your face, the delivery is very important because it lets the girl know you're just joking around. These lines I've given you here will work great in person, but they're not so good over text because the girl can't see your face, and so it can easily be misinterpreted. Now, with that being said, if you want to get my complete cheat sheet for how to make a girl chase you over text, you can get that by clicking the link in the description right now. When you click that link, you'll be taken to another video where I teach you the big secret to make a girl beg to be your girlfriend or buddy over text message. Click the link in the description to watch that now.